Every generation or so, we're gifted a moment that breaks the internet. A moment that has all of the anime community watching. And that moment was Gojo versus Sukuna. Before we break down just how insane this moment is, let's break down why all JJK fans were hyped for this fight. The Gojo vs Sukuna fight was a battle that had been foreshadowed since episode 2 of the series. We had a moment where Gojo fights a weakened Sukuna, and obviously we know Gojo beat that nigga's ass, but at that time we were like, oh snap, this is an insane fight. And while that's a great moment, we knew that the real fight between these two would probably go a little differently. Looking retrospectively at this moment, we actually kind of know that that moment was super significant for both characters. So for starters, this was probably Gojo's first glazed moment, and obviously if you're a JJK fan, you know that we needed that. But in addition to that, it added a lot of intrigue on Sukuna's full power because we knew that when Sukuna had all 20 fingers, this nigga was gonna be a problem. And honestly, it's kind of funny because I think Gege knew that that was going to be a question that people had because he literally doubled down on that point because he had Yuji straight up ask Gojo like, yo, could you beat Sukuna if that nigga was at full power? Like, could you beat that guy? And Gojo says one of the best quotes in the series where he says, you know, it'd be a pretty tough fight. And obviously Yuji's like, okay, but like, would you lose though? And Gojo simply says, nah, I'd win. And honestly, that scene alone could be its own video. That quote was everywhere. And obviously we'll touch on why it was everywhere, but that is an all-time quote in anime, just period. But there's a lot more to it. Stay with me here. Funny enough, the "Nah, I win" meme wasn't really a meme when it first dropped. Gege had to set up the groundwork. This is where Gege begins his magna opus. Touching on JJK jumping hundreds of chapters later, Gojo's been sealed and subsequently unsealed. In the meantime, during Shibuya, Sukuna's basically fucking shit up and he's eating more fingers. We are assuming at some point in time these two titans are going to collide, and we don't know how it's going to look. We have Gojo freshly unsealed. After 3 arcs, we know shit's about to go down. Gojo gets unsealed, quote unquote, and the nigga's not even there because this nigga Gojo flash stepped all the way to where Kenjaku and all the niggas are. Before Gojo can put Kenjaku in the dirt, he gets stopped by someone he wasn't really expecting, Megumi. While this whole thing's going on, we have Arame just doing dumb shit. Like, she's trying to press Gojo. She must understand how this shit works. Like, this is Gojo Kaisen. She doesn't understand that we are in the big leagues right now. Before anything can happen, Gojo says, hold on, let's chill because a lot of shit's going on right now, and I think even I'm confused. Let's reschedule this ass whooping I'm trying to give you because I don't want to have to give you 2 death anniversaries. That's kind of weird. So Kenjaku, I'm gonna beat your ass on Christmas Eve because that's when I killed Geto the first time. Kenjaku asks a really good question. With all this shit stacked up against you, you don't expect to lose? And before Gojo can even answer the question, we get the flashback to episode 2 where Yuji asks Gojo how he thinks a fight between him and Sukuna would go. We get a remix of the first time he says it where Gojo says, again, nah, I'd win. And let me tell you, this shit was peak. I talked about how the "nah, I win" meme was kind of a whole anime meme, and this is the reason. I think it's kind of crazy because all of the hype of Gojo coming back was saved for this moment somehow. When Gojo came back to the beginning of the chapter, it was hype, don't get me wrong, but it just didn't really hit. A lot of shit's changed. The situation is dire, but Gojo is back, so everything is handled. That's how early JJK felt, and that's how it feels right now. Looking at that "nah, I'd win" meme, it just kind of took over 2023. You could not go anywhere without it being recreated. We saw it with different characters, different animes, shit. You even saw it with different historical figures. This is essentially the backdrop of the internet fracture. A worldwide meme that had all people in the world, even non-JJK readers, locked in on attendance. But let's kind of be honest, bro. If the actual Gojo Sukuna fight didn't hit, that shit might have been the most overrated scene of all time. Despite the fact that we all expected the fight to be good, this was not going to be an easy thing to pull off for Gege. On one hand, we have the biggest anomaly in sorcery history, and on the other, we have the king of curses and essentially JJK's final villain. Or a better way to kind of phrase it, the strongest sorcery in history versus the strongest sorcery of today. Somehow both characters have to live up to the hype, but only one character can win. You swing the fight too much in one way and it discredits the entire other side. But even under this intense pressure, this nigga Gege clutched up. But let me kind of break it down. Let me show you. It's only right that the Gojo versus Sukuna fight kicks off in the craziest way possible, which is Gojo having a crazy ass hollow purple smacking Sukuna in his shit, followed by Gojo talking some good shit because, you know, that's what Gojo do. He talk that good shit. Gojo basically tells him like, yo, straight up, I don't care who you are, bro, but you're the challenger in this fight, so get ready to get your ass beat. And again, Sukuna talks shit too. Don't get things twisted. You know, Sukuna is also like that. So he tells him, I don't know who you think you are, but you're just a fish on the cutting board. One thing to really point out with the Gojo Sukuna fight that I think other anime really should touch upon and do more is, despite the fact that it was really just Gojo and Sukuna fighting, we had the entire Team Gojo cast watching and narrating the fight. These niggas are giving us play-by-play like this is ESPN, and believe me, we all needed this. These two niggas were breaking the rules of sorcery one by one, simply because they were both him. One thing I like about the fight overall is that it wasn't even really just ass pulling. Like, everything that happened made sense. One thing that Gege did masterfully with the power system, it was established that the only limit on the power system for JJK is the user's mastery. This was something that Gege really showed us when Sukuna took over Megumi's body. Any ability in the hands of a master becomes the greatest ability. Let's look at domain expansion, which I think a lot of niggas know is the strongest ability in JJK. We're told in this fight, domain expansion is a powerful ass ability. You can only do this shit one a day. But Gojo and Sukuna, them niggas was spamming that shit like Naruto used to do with wrestling on back in the day. These niggas were going domain for domain just to flex. One thing that all JJK fans know Gege loves to do is glaze Gojo. And that's something that Gege kind of does in a lot more, so he glazes Gojo and Sukuna, which is perfect for the fight. In real time, we're basically readjusting how we view the two greatest characters in the series. For instance, Yuta points out that Sukuna and Gojo are neck and neck in terms of cursed energy efficiency. Now, in real time, this is a crazy ass reveal because we all know that Gojo's cursed energy consumption is infinitely close to zero because of his 6 eyes. So the fact that this nigga Sukuna also can match his consumption, this nigga might be the GOAT. Sukuna might really be better than Gojo. And the thing is, that's not even the craziest part. He also has easily the best cursed energy in the series. I think Yuta himself, who we knew as the person who had the most at the time, he says straight up, this nigga Sukuna has twice as much as me. This is the perfect time to kind of talk about how the world of JJK was split into two camps. You had Team Gojo and you had Team Sukuna. And let me tell you, when this chapter dropped, the Sukuna stock was up. Niggas was saying this nigga Sukuna is the best thing since sliced bread. He might have been better than that shit. He might have cut it himself. One thing I love about this fight that I spoke about in a video with Alon Z, so shout out him and subscribe if you haven't already, is the fact that when you were reading these chapters, it felt like a moment in time that you can't really get back again. It was kind of like watching anime with your friends on the couch, like when you were younger. Those are moments we don't really get anymore. Like the discourse, the memes, everything was fun. But instead of friends on the couch, the boundaries were the entire world. And speaking of boundaries, this is when Gojo flips the script with his domain. I'm Team Gojo, so you gotta understand that that's how I'm looking at this fight at the time. During this part of the battle, Gojo was low-key getting his ass pressed, I'm not gonna lie. One thing that we didn't really touch too much on early in JJK is the fact that the one rule with a domain is closed domains, you can't escape from the inside, but the outside is very, very vulnerable. So because of that, Sukuna was breaking Gojo's domain a couple of times. Shit was looking not good. We're damn near 5 minutes into the fight and this nigga Gojo gets beheaded. Everyone was shook because this was probably the first time that Gojo really took damage in a fight. With Gojo on the ropes like this, Gojo has no choice but to do the impossible because that's what he does. Gojo literally changes the boundaries of his domain. This is not something that people can normally do. He reverses how the domain conditions work. So now his domain is strong against external attacks. Even niggas in the series were like, yo, this shit isn't possible, but hey, this is how they work. But while Gojo is doing the impossible, we have Sukuna doing the same shit. Sukuna straight up is able to use his domain amplification and his curse technique in his domain, which is something we never even knew was possible. These two are literally redefining the power system right before our eyes. This battle is a battle of resources. I think one thing that people don't understand is that Gojo and Sukuna have two unique kits and two unique abilities. And throughout the fight, they're trying to manage their resources on some like chess level shit. And one of the resources that Gojo is pretty much relying a lot on is his curse technique. Despite the fact that this nigga uses pretty much zero cursed energy at all times, he is constantly using reverse curse technique to basically stop himself from dying from the cuts. And while that's happening, Gojo's thinking, okay, well, I'm gonna lose my curse technique soon, so you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna use my RCT to reset my burnt out curse technique. He's essentially looping his energy so he doesn't run out as quickly. But again, don't think that this is only a Gojo thing, because Sukuna sees him do that shit and is like, okay, cool, I'm gonna just copy your style. While they're doing their back and forth, we have Sukuna basically realizing that what I can do is shorten my domain length or shorten the range in order to increase its power, and add on top of that a binding vow, which we know is really important. In exchange for the domain's sure hit ability, he'll just give it more power. And he has the final kicker. Sukuna, in a short ass amount of time, already figured out the one flaw of Infinite Void. The only people unaffected by his Infinite Void are Gojo and the people that touch him. So a simple game of tag is how Sukuna beats Gojo's domain this other time. One thing with the domain clashes is because they are using their domains at the exact same time, they're basically both being destroyed. And they were trying to figure out a bunch of different tips and tricks to basically overcome each other, and nothing's really working. We're told basically straight up that if Gojo activates his domain at any point in time quicker than Sukuna's, this is his win. Like, this shit is over. We're done with this battle. And this is where Gojo's gamble pays off. Since Gojo was healing his curse technique with RCT, his curse technique is slightly faster. Like, I'm talking about 1/100th of a second faster, but that shit's all it takes. His infinite void hits and it's up. Sukuna did really good, but Gojo was just a little better. Infinite void hits Sukuna. Sukuna's brain is fried and it's over. But just before this nigga Gojo can get the win and call this series over, we have what I'm gonna tell you and spoil for you right now is the biggest X factor in the fight sliding through. This nigga Mahoraga. And to make matters worse than that, this nigga Mahoraga pulled up adapted to infinite void. Despite the fact this is a tough situation, it's still looking like it's kind of Gojo's win, right? Because at the end of the day, all Gojo has to do is bring out his domain and he can destroy Mahoraga in one hit and he can destroy Sukuna. But there's one problem. This is a fight that Gojo's kind of never been through before, where Gojo's had to push himself beyond any limit he's ever had. One thing that I think this fight has that I'd even say a bunch of other all-time fights don't have is the fact that from a panel to panel basis, the misdirection was insane. Gojo has Sukuna on the ropes. All he has to do is hit him with one more domain expansion, but we come to find out that the nigga has a nosebleed, and like not even like on some Sanji shit. I'm talking about the nigga's brain is burnt out. He's done too much shit with his curse technique and he can't beat him. Despite the fact that it seemed like Gojo has the dub, it's over. Because of Gojo constantly using his RCT, he almost died like 5 times. Essentially, like, it's up. Gojo cannot use any more domains. The domain shit for Gojo is done. And now it's like, okay, cool. Well, Sukuna, he wasn't doing that RCT shit. So Sukuna, all he has to do is open up his domain and this shit is up. Sukuna is, all he has to do is make a closed domain and end the fight. And Sukuna, being the arrogant ass nigga he is, he starts trying to aura farm on Gojo right before the battle ends. Because he's like, you know, you're cool, like, you're pretty nice, you're good for your area, but you were only the strongest because I wasn't around. That's why you're so mediocre. Sukuna's like, all right, cool, let me get rid of this nigga domain expansion. And that shit shatters, which shocks everyone, including us. Even though the amount of time that he was hit with the infinite void was less than 10 seconds, that infinite void was strong enough to hit Sukuna's brain, and it fried his brain to the point that he can't open a domain anymore. We basically had 4 heel turns in 2 chapters, and now we have a battle between the 2 greatest with no domains. One thing that this fight has a lot of is, in between crazy fight moments, we have Team Gojo basically explaining some shit. We hit a good glazing checkpoint. Kusakabe goes into detail about how Gojo, whenever he hits someone with blue, he boosts his attack. So not only do you feel the attack of blue, but it's like a counter punch. It's like 2 punches in one. And if that wasn't bad enough, a basic ass infinite blue punch from Gojo one-shot both Yuta and Hikari, which is probably the 2 strongest characters left on the good side. I remember reading this at the time and I'm thinking like, okay, but what's the relevancy? Like, why are we getting this random Gojo glaze? And you think about that for half a second and you realize like, oh shit, it's because we have to understand that Gojo and Sukuna are basically an infinite amount of tiers above everyone else. It is not close. Every punch Gojo throws is literally a one-shot Hikari ass type of punch, and Sukuna's tanking it, and he's throwing punches equally as strong. And that's the most important thing to understand, because after that, Kusakabe's like, yo, I said that to say we don't know what the hell Gojo's gonna do next. There is no amount of logic we can do to quantify Gojo and Sukuna. With that, we get a whole explanation on Mahoraga's adaptation. Every time Mahoraga adapts to an attack, he takes it in and then his wheel starts spinning. And this is like a cool progress bar for the fight, because right on cue with that whole explanation, Sukuna has the wheel above his head and it starts spinning. We understand that Mahoraga needs 4 total spins to adapt to infinity. Now that 1 spin's already happened, we got 3 more. We've now gone from a domain band for band clash to a race of beating adaptation. And almost on cue with this whole explanation, we have a 2nd spin. And right now it's looking kind of weird because we have Gojo kind of being a dumbass. Gojo's kind of spamming a bunch of limitless blues, which gives Sukuna another spin. 1 more spin and Sukuna will adapt to Gojo and this fight will end. And this is like the next wrinkle of the battle, because Sukuna is relying a lot on Mahoraga's abilities and the 10 Shadows abilities to kind of beat Gojo now. He's kind of gone away from his ability. And the main thing about this part of the fight is the question of how does Mahoraga's adaptation work, because this is the key to whether Gojo wins or loses. Does his adaptation take the attack 1 time, take time to understand it, and then adapt? Or does it adapt incrementally after taking a bunch of attacks? And this is a really good question that we kind of don't get answered for a long time. And this is a really, really good thing, because Gege is playing a very, very delicate balance, like I've said, where he's explaining abilities during the fight, but also leaving up to viewer discretion. We're not getting every ability of Mahoraga's explained because he's the biggest X factor factor in this fight. He can't really reveal his cards just yet. At this point in the fight, we have Sukuna's win con, but we don't know Gojo's win con, which makes the fight super interesting because we're looking at it like, oh shit, what can Gojo do to win? This is where Gojo starts doing shit we really haven't seen before. Gojo hits Sukuna with red and essentially has that shit circle around him and then hit him again. And before this nigga's chest can even cave in, Gojo hits him with a black flash, breaking the minds of everyone in real time. Every JJK fan loved Black Flash at the time. Like, we all knew it was a cool ability, and we all knew Gojo had it. Like, it's an ability that Gojo has, but we just never thought he'd use it, at least in a time like this. And not only is Black Flash a crazy ability, but we didn't expect for it to do what it did, because when Gojo uses Black Flash, he knocks out Sukuna. Sukuna was leaking, bro was unconscious. This nigga was seeing the stars. This shit was over. Mahoraga's will hit the floor, and let me tell you, Agenda Kaisen might have been at its peak right now. The amount of Mickey Mouse Sukuna memes that were on Twitter were unbelievable, bro. Even though Sukuna didn't die here, it didn't really help the fraud memes because he gets saved by Mahoraga before Gojo can end the fight. Mahoraga comes and slashes Gojo up. It's funny because even though Gojo is low-key on his heels again, as Team Gojo, we are eating. Niggas are saying that Sukuna is a 10 Shadows merchant. Now, I understand there's more nuance than that, but I'm gonna be honest, this is how agendas work. We don't really need to know what's actually happened. We need to know what's our agendas hitting for. But we gotta refocus on the fight because despite what just happened, Gojo's still back on the defensive because he's now looking at a terrifying Mahoraga and his RCT is slowing down. And this is another great moment with the fight. Despite the fact this was a week-to-week fight, he kind of gave it little peak moments that made it feel like its own included fight per chapter. We were still hyped every time. Like, for instance, during this part of the battle, your Team Gojo, you're like, oh shit, Gojo's gonna lose. Gojo himself is thinking, I might lose. And that makes him almost hyped because he's like, when was the last time I felt like I might lose a fight? And it's funny because both the audience and Gojo all think about one man. This fight literally had everything. If you're a Toji fan, and I know there's a lot of Toji fans, you know what I'm saying, in the audience, so stand up, hit that like and subscribe. Them niggas was craving shit too. And it's like, I bet no one expected that we would get some Toji glaze somehow for no reason. One aspect of this fight that doesn't get talked about is how it affects Gojo's character. A huge part of Gojo is the fact that he is the strongest. It's even brought up early on in the series. Gojo is an isolated guy. He fights his best when he's by himself because there's no one to hold him back. The title of the strongest itself brings isolation. Because of that, this is a fight that Gojo is looking for. He's looking for a battle in which he can finally relate to another man and look eye to eye. So with this new crazy boost of adrenaline for Gojo, Gojo starts teeing up and starts talking in tongue. We learned that if you use the chance associated with an ability, it makes the output of the attack stronger. And now Sukuna is on the defensive. But obviously we know Sukuna has a lot of shit with him. Like, the nigga has Mahoraga. We have Sukuna on offense and Mahoraga on defense, which it's not looking good, I'm not gonna lie. And we seeing Gojo's getting jumped. Now, this thing is getting jumped. Like, this is a nasty 2-on-1. Gojo even says it like, nigga, you low-key jumping me 2-on-1. And Sukuna is low-key a dickhead because he's like, you saying 2-on-1? Well, it's really not that because it's actually a 3-on-1. And this nigga makes a conglomerate of Shikagamis and makes a creature called Agato, which is a bunch of his 10 shadows combined. And it's kind of funny because the Gojo agenda is both somehow on life support and Cloud 9. Gojo was already getting pressed out by Sukuna and Maho, and now he's got Agato as well. But on the bright side, Gojo's getting jumped and he's low-key doing decent, which means if we're gonna power scale Gojo versus 20 Finger Sukuna, that nigga Gojo's really the strongest. It is what it is. My glorious King Gojo, he was winning a 3v1 and he was talking shit. We are eating good. But back to the whole Gojo getting his ass beat part. Remember when I said Mahoraga was like the MVP of this fight? Yeah, this is kind of why. Because we have Mahoraga and he is doing a bunch of shit. Like, he tanks a whole Limitless red and he's adapting to infinity. And it's pretty much now or never. Gojo's not worried about Agato. Sukuna's strong, but the real thing that's causing him issue is Mahoraga, so he has to get rid of bro once and for all. And the only way to get rid of that nigga is a hollow purple. This is really kind of a tough scene because we're seeing Team Gojo being like, okay, well, we could jump in, we could help Gojo, there's a way for us to help. And Akari's like, nigga, no. Like, you know, Gojo said straight up, don't jump in the fight until Gojo's weaker than either me or you. And Gojo's way stronger than Akari and Yuta still, which is, you know, more Gojo glaze. So this is not going to be one of those JJK jump sessions. It's not like that, or at least not yet. A really cool scene from this fight, looking at it, is the fact that when we're seeing it, we have Sukuna have a whole dialogue, which is a rare monologue for him. We don't really see a lot of Sukuna's inner thoughts. We see Sukuna's kind of worried about purple because at this stage in the fight, if he gets hit with the hollow purple, this shit is over. But he's kind of waiting. He's waiting for Mahoraga to show him something. And when Mahoraga shows him something, that's when shit'll get popping. Almost right on cue, the wheels turn and Mahoraga, he cuts the nigga Gojo's arm. This is pretty much the beginning of the end, and I think everyone knew it. Gojo had been hurt before, but it just felt different this time, you know? Even Sukuna knew it, like, yo, I figured out the way. This might be the way to do it. Mahoraga can throw slashes. It's looking like it's over for Gojo, you know what I'm saying? But I think Gojo himself is realizing this fight is not even really that hard. It's more about annoying. And the nigga that's most annoying right now is Agato. He looks at bro like, nigga, this whole time you ain't really been able to keep up. Like, you've been kind of getting carried by these other better niggas. Let me get rid of you. Hits the nigga with a Limitless blue and he's out of there. The next move is to use the second hollow purple that's going to be used in this fight. Gege is kind of low-key a fiend for this because the next chapter we get, it starts off with Gojo hitting Sukuna in the shit with what else but a second black flash, which boosts up Gojo's energy back up and gives Sukuna a fear that he hasn't felt in a millennia. This nigga feels uneasy. I'm talking about shaky shoulders and everything. Gojo's on the offensive, and even though Sukuna knows what Gojo's gonna do next, it don't matter because Gojo has a plan. Bro gives his Limitless red a little boost, you know what I'm saying, give it a little champ, and while everyone's focused on the Limitless red, no one peeps the Limitless blue, which causes those two joints to hit at the same time and causes an ultimate hollow purple. Like, this shit eviscerates everything. Probably the strongest attack Gojo has ever pretty much used in the entire series. Normally the way Gojo's hollow purple works is that he ensures that a little bit of damage is reserved so he doesn't really get hurt, but he's like, you know, fuck it, I'm hitting these niggas with a hollow purple nuke. And thanks to Black Flash, Gojo's regained some of his output for RCT. It looks like Sukuna can't really heal rapidly, so Sukuna can't heal anymore. He lost Maho, and he can't even really fight with amplification anymore. So in other words, Gojo wins. And this is probably the peak of Team Gojo. If you are on the Gojo train, there has never been a more hype moment. Gojo successfully beat a 3v1. He beat Mahoraga. He beat whatever the hell Agato is. And he beat Sukuna with Megami's powers. The nigga's the GOAT. I know I said it like 1,000 times, but Gojo wins. The fight is finally over. The sugar high from chapter 235, it'll never be matched in JJK. You can't tell us Gojo fans shit. Gojo outmaneuvered everything. He beat two curse techniques. He beat an open domain. Gojo is the strongest. Unfortunately for Gojo fans, Gege had one last misdirection left. He left the biggest heel turn for the conclusion of the fight because the next chapter starts with Gojo talking with Geto, which makes zero sense. I'm out here thinking, okay, well, this shit is weird. Maybe Gojo's hallucinating. It's weird. If things can't get any worse, it's pretty much confirmed straight up Gojo is dead. And that shit hurt my heart. Gojo is literally running through how he fought Sukuna to his best friend, his deceased best friend. It's over. We all knew Sukuna was strong, but Gojo tells him straight up, Sukuna's not just strong. This nigga is someone that I don't even know if I could have beaten if he didn't have 10 shadows. Like, this nigga might just be stronger than me. This is the end of the peak of Agenda Kaisen. Just a chapter ago, Gojo, he was seen as far above Sukuna. And a chapter later, Gege is like, yo, no, Sukuna was above him somehow. And I'm gonna be honest, bro, whether you like the conclusion or not, this is one of the more contentious conclusions to an anime fight ever. I almost forgot about the conclusion of the actual fight. It's all because of the MVP of the battle, and the MVP is Mahoraga. So I kind of was hinting that Mahoraga was the big bad and he was like the real X factor, and this is why. It was teased heavily about how Maho's adaptation works, and it wasn't really fully explained up until now. We learned that Maho's adaptation slowly starts analyzing an attack once it receives the first one, and after a certain amount of time it's completed. But during this adaptation process, if it receives additional attacks, the completion time is sped up. But here's the real kicker. Not only does it ensure that adaptation of the first Jujutsu, but the analysis doesn't stop and the adaptation continues, which essentially means it's going to keep giving you ways to adapt. So if you have an attack that has one way to solve it, the adaptation will keep on going and keep on giving you more adaptations. And this is all Sukuna needed. Honestly, throughout the series, Sukuna's been kind of shown as a character who can mimic anything. All he needs to do is see it one time. All Sukuna needed was a model to bypass infinity. The first time Mahoraga made a way to adapt to infinity, it did it in a way that Sukuna couldn't really mimic. So because of that, the nigga just waited. Like, he just hit the waiting game. He waited until he got the second adaptation. That's a slash that didn't cut Gojo necessarily. It cut the space and the world itself, the world ending slash, Sukuna's strongest attack ever. And I'm not gonna lie, bro, from this point on in the series, JJK is polarizing to say the least. Some niggas straight up say that after this fight, after this moment in time, JJK fell off. Gojo died in a dumb way. Gege glazed Sukuna, the battle didn't make sense. Some people actually say it was perfect for Gojo's character and that the ending of the series was great. For me personally, where I stand, I'm somewhere in the middle there. Like, I think that the fight was good. I think that it makes sense for his character, but I'm not a huge fan of how Gojo's death kind of ended. You know what I'm saying? I don't really think necessarily that Gojo needed to say that he couldn't have been Sukuna without Megami's 10 shadows. I don't really know if he needed to say that. I think that shit was a little uncalled for. It felt kind of like Gege inserted a line so that the agenda wars could finally end, and no one could kind of complain or argue about who was stronger between Sukuna and Gojo. But that's not really where the battle ends necessarily, in the sense of we have one last final meme where we have Sukuna straight up tell Gojo, "You were magnificent. I will never forget you for as long as I live." And this shit was sad because we're seeing Gojo, or we're seeing half of Gojo because the nigga's cut in two. We're seeing what's happening, but we're not even processing it. I ain't gonna lie, my stomach hurt in real time. This is the end of the fight. This is the end of Satoru Gojo. Sukuna fans, y'all niggas, I ain't gonna lie, fuck y'all niggas for real. But regardless of where you stood on the fight's conclusion, one thing we could all agree is that this was the peak of JJK, and we were taken to heights that we had never seen before.